And what I want to give you is some quick tips on how to boost your sales after the event's over, how to repurpose the content that came out of your event, and how to leverage relationships that, both old and new relationships that came from preparing for the event, producing the event, and what you can do afterwards to really make this even more worth your time, effort, and money to produce events, whether they're a single standalone small event like a webinar or workshop, or if it's a huge multi-speaker, multi-day virtual summit. So as Huang mentioned, my company's Freedompreneur. Under that umbrella, I have two main brands. One is Freedompreneur MD and the other is Ungoldfish Interactive. Why Freedompreneur MD? Well, I'm a plastic surgeon by training. And in 2005, I started working with entrepreneurs from around the world. I stopped practicing and retired in 2003, very disillusioned with the medical system, and found it was a lot more fun working with entrepreneurs. So I've been doing that since, like I said, since 2005. And one of the things I found along the way is that, because I've been working remotely since then, but in doing like hundreds of webinars and virtual summits, I really found that the platforms were limiting in terms of being able to talk to people. And I'm used to talking with patients and examining them and working one-on-one, and in the online world, it was very limiting. So I developed an interactive approach to articles and blog posts, and I'm excited about Remo because of the ability to interact with people, see and hear them, just like you're sitting next to them. So that's how I ended up here today, is just a lot of different interests, and mainly interest in the human connection and communication piece. So what we're going to talk about today are strategic levers for what you can do after your event is over. And you want to be thinking about these things before, like in part of the planning before you even run your event. You want to be thinking about how do you optimize your sales and cash flow. And most people think about just, okay, I need to sell during the event. Now I've got to focus on that, or I've got to sell to the people who came to the event. But there are actually some other things to consider, which we'll get into shortly. And then a lot of times what I see with people who do these events is they don't do anything with the content afterwards. So we're going to talk about how to repurpose the brand new content that's incredibly valuable, that ought to be shared with people. And some idea, we'll talk about some ideas for how to do that. And then another thing that I notice is that people don't necessarily take advantage of the relationships that they've built with attendees, with speakers, with even sponsors and other people supporting the event. So we'll talk about that as well. Let's start with optimizing your sales and cash flow, because unless you're got a massive migraine, probably it's one of your top priorities is to optimize your sales and cash flow. And let me point out to you, using this little map that I created, I want to point out a couple, or actually 3 areas that are commonly overlooked. So this is a typical webinar or even a virtual summit promotional pathway. You have an invitation email sequence that goes out to people on your list. People are maybe coming in through social media. They come and sign up on your sign up page, and they either sign up or don't sign up. Okay, and if they sign up, they get a thank you or confirmation page, and then they get a follow-up, what I call a webinar show-up sequence, which, by the way, most people forget to do this, but you need to reinforce their decision to sign up and entice them to come to actually show up live. Then they come to the webinar, they either attend or don't attend. And if they attend, they either buy from you or don't. Okay, so now the 3 areas to pay attention to where you can really optimize your sales and cash flow is your after event sales sequence. And I recommend a 3 to 7 part follow-up sequence. That isn't all just about selling. It's part education, part entertainment. So make sure you include the after event sales sequence, email sales sequence in your workflow. But a common thing that gets overlooked is people who don't attend your event. And I think it's important to either send them a replay, or even if you don't have a replay, to invite them to whatever offer you made at the webinar. Okay, so but the email sequence has to be written differently, because these people are at a different place in their thinking. They weren't on the webinar. They don't necessarily know what you're talking about. So the email sequence for the people who didn't attend your event has to be different than the sales sequence for people who did attend but didn't buy. All right, now there's one other area to look at, which is over here on the left, and that's for people who did not sign up for your event. You can actually and ought to sell to them as well, but again, you have to write your email sequence to sell to them in a different way than you would for people who signed up for the event and did or didn't attend. All right, but this is a commonly overlooked area, because just because they didn't sign up for your event doesn't mean they're not interested in what you have to offer. Okay, so the next thing to talk about is repurposing your content. And I put together a little quick idea tickler. This is certainly not exhaustive by any means, but if you've created an event, whether it's a one-day or a multi-day event, you can turn that content into lead magnets, content for newsletters, content for email sequences, bonus material for programs and products and services that you're offering. You can turn it into promotional highlight reels. Make it a video. Oh, I've got a duplicate there. And you can turn it into blog posts, video blogs, books, courses and mini courses, and social media posts. So how do you take all this material? Well, the material will be, of course, you have the audio and video and probably the video versions, but how do you turn it into written content? So I have a really cool resource for you. It's called otter.ai. This is transcription using artificial intelligence. And what you do is you upload an audio of your session, or you can even just talk in your computer and create content and put it on, send it to Otter, and Otter will transcribe your recording. And with Otter, and there are other companies that offer transcription using artificial intelligence, but I like Otter because your first 600 minutes per month are free. 600 minutes of transcription for free. And so I don't have any stake in the company. I just use it. And so I think it's a really cool resource to use to take your content that you've recorded and repurpose it. Okay, now the final area to leverage or to pull is leveraging relationships. And whether you're an extrovert or introvert, or an ambivert like me, I highly recommend taking advantage of this, because you've put a lot of effort and energy into cultivating relationships with attendees of your events, sponsors of your events, people who support the event, and other speakers if you have multiple speakers involved. And this, again, is not an exhaustive list, but you could, of course, get referrals by to and from the people who are involved in the event. You may collaborate with some of the people you've met at these events. You may have opportunities to guest blog for some of these people, or invite them to guest blog for you, and similarly to be a guest blogger, guest podcaster on their podcast, or and vice versa. From people you meet here and there at these different events, you might group together and pull your resources and create a multi-speaker event like summits. You may choose to invite one or more of these people to form an accountability partnership or an accountability group, which I've done before. You could invite them to be a formal or informal team, part of your board of advisors. You may contact them intermittently or periodically for resource recommendations. Like in the networking we've done today, in between sessions, I've asked some of the people, how do you do this? How do you handle pre-recorded webinars, or pre-recording and broadcast that? I learned some valuable things already. You may create masterminds from the people you've met, and you may just informally call them and say, or get in touch and say, hey, I've written something. Can you give me feedback on this? I do this all the time when I'm writing sales pages. I'm a conversion copywriter. When I'm writing a sales page, it's imperative to get feedback from people who are not me, because we all have blind spots, right? So I think that there, of course, we can add to this list. And I think if we had, I see when our session is supposed to end, if we had more time, what I'd like to do, what I recommend is to actually break out and actually go to tables and talk about this. So I don't know, Ho Yen, do we have time for that? let me check or Mevish, do we have time to do some real, end the presentation and go into the tables? If we do, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, you've got time. You've got
We do, okay.
another, let's see, you have another like 7 to 10 minutes.
Okay, well, let's do that. Then, so what we'll do, just one other thing. So if you're interested, if you have questions for me, send me an email, george@ungoldfish.com. And we also have a course that we're putting together. It's called Interactive Online Event Academy. And if you want to be on, it's going to be released in February. If you're interested in that, we're going to be teaching how to essentially 10x your interactive webinars, workshops, and meetups by building in interactive exercises. You can get in touch with me if you want more information about that. But yeah, let's end the broadcast and let's go into the breakout or the tables. And what I think what I'd like to do is have everybody talk about what's one takeaway you're going to put into action from each of these 3 levers that we talked about. And the levers, again, are optimizing your sales and cash flow, repurposing your fresh, valuable content, and leveraging relationships, old and new.
Great. All right. I'm going to turn off the broadcast and I'll let you guys break out.
Excellent.